Hey guys, in this module, we're going to cover how to fix the communication. Now, if you're paying attention, our three-step process, step number one is be the man. That's all about you working on you to become the man that God created you to be, the man that your wife needs you to be. Removing any of those things that are in the way, that are getting in between you and that man. It's a really important step because that step helps us to eliminate some of the problems that show up in communication. So, for example, if you have fears or insecurities that you haven't worked through, those are going to get in the way of you communicating well. It's going to lead to defensiveness. It's going to lead to passive behavior, avoiding conflict, peacekeeper type of behaviors. So we want to make sure that we address the issues in step number one with be the man first. Then we move into communication. A little background on communication. First off, conflict is inevitable. Now, this NLT translation of Genesis 3:16 is very interesting. It says, "And you will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you." So this is right after the fall, right? Genesis chapter 3. Um, Genesis chapter 2, man and woman are made. It doesn't take very long, right? Next scene, the fall happens. And as a result of the fall, God is laying out what the consequences of that are going to be. And part of it was, pain and childbirth, and that the man will eat by the sweat of his brow, right? That kind of stuff. Um, this is one of those pieces, though. And you will desire to control your husband, but he will roll over you. Maybe you've noticed that in your relationship, where maybe your spouse wants to have control. Maybe like me, my wife, um, she's just a lot more opinionated than me. She cares about things a lot more deeply. Not that I don't care, but a lot of things just aren't a big deal to me, and they're a big deal to her. And so it's really easy for me to just let her have control, to just let her lead. And years later of letting her lead, it led to a lot of other issues in our relationship. She's a woman, you're a man. You guys think differently, right? Men tend to think logically, women tend to think emotionally. It's like we're speaking different languages at times. We're not always going to see eye to eye. In any relationship, romantic or otherwise, there's going to be times where you just don't see eye to eye with people. That's not the problem. We'll talk about the problem in a minute here. Conflict should be addressed. It's not something that should just be left alone. Romans 12:18 says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Okay, so it's telling us that we really should try to find peace in our relationships, to resolve that conflict. And how you handle that conflict determines if it's going to drive you apart or if it's going to bring you together. Now, a peacekeeper avoids the conflict to try to keep the peace, while a peacemaker approaches the conflict to make peace out of conflict. I used to be confused by that. When it says blessed are the peacemakers, I thought peacemaker and peacekeeper was the same thing. They're not at all. And so I was trying to keep the peace by avoiding conflict, and that just led to bigger conflict down the road. We need to address the conflict, not just let it go. And the third kind of concept that I want you to understand about conflict is that conflict is an opportunity. Proverbs 27:17 says, iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Okay, iron sharpening iron, it creates sparks, right? It's kind of, I don't want to say violent, but it's an action of striking one object against the other, right? We're in our relationships, we're bumping up against each other. When we handle that well, the conflict is an opportunity to build understanding, emotional connection, and respect. If your relationship lacks respect, if your relationship lacks that emotional connection, if your wife is telling you, I just don't feel connected, I don't feel emotionally safe, if one of you is avoiding the conflict and shutting down, or if one of you is getting angry and defensive and escalating, none of those things are going to help you to resolve the conflict. Conflict is an opportunity for you guys to gain understanding, for you guys to build respect, for you guys to be on the same team, to work towards resolving the problem instead of that problem getting in between you guys and driving you apart. Okay, really important. Conflict is inevitable. It's going to happen. Conflict should be addressed. Especially in our marriages, we need to address conflict. I used to believe that if we just ignored it for long enough, it would go away. And guess what? Years and years and years of having the same conversations, the same arguments, and me just saying, can't we just put that in the past? Why do we have to keep talking about this? And the reason why is because we hadn't resolved it. I hadn't given my wife the opportunity to really talk through it. I hadn't spent the time to understand her, to help her to feel seen and heard. So she held on to those things. We need to address the conflict. And again, conflict is an opportunity. When you start looking at it in that way, it helps it to not feel so scary, helps you to look at it from a different vantage point. Okay, we've got some conflict here. We're in disagreement. We're not seeing eye to eye. Let's work on that together. Because when we work through that, that's going to bring us closer together. All right, so why should we approach conflict? I talked about it there in Romans 12:18, but Matthew 5:23 through 24 says, so if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First, be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Now, it's a really interesting passage, right? It's talking about this religious ritual where the Jews would go and offer their gifts at the altar, and God is actually saying, "Hey, you know what's more important than that? Go and reconcile with your brother. If there's something between you guys, if there's conflict, if there's disagreement, you need to go and do that first. That way, your heart can be in a better place when you come to offer your gift." This passage is telling us that reconciliation is a priority. It's important. And avoiding that conflict, again, it's not going to make it go away. Over time, that unresolved conflict will build up and eventually turn into resentment. And resentment creates this like wall of ice between the two of you guys. If your wife is angry all the time, if really small things end up being really big things, it's a good sign that there's unresolved conflict. So, how do we become a peacemaker? We talked about peacekeepers avoid conflict, try to keep the peace. Peacemakers approach the conflict to turn the conflict into peace. I've got 4 steps for you guys. Step 1, be slow to anger. If you're approaching the conflict in an angry way, chances are it's not going to go very well. You might force your way, but that's not going to lead to the lasting connection that you want with your wife, the lasting respect that you want with your wife. So we need to be slow to anger. We need to approach the conflict, and how we approach that conflict has a huge impact on how it goes. We need to be quick to hear, slow to speak, and we need to take ownership. And hopefully, a lot of these things sound very familiar because they're straight out of the Bible. So let's talk about how to be slow to anger. Proverbs 15:19 says, "A hot tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger quiets the contention." This is huge, guys. How you approach, if you're approaching the conflict out of anger, you're just going to stir up strife. You're just going to make things worse. But if you're slow to anger, you can quiet that contention. Maintaining emotional control is critical for building emotional safety and healthy communication. If you want to make peace, you must set your anger aside and you have to respond with patience, gentleness, kindness. Now, the work that you do in step number one to be the man, to overcome the fears, the insecurities, the things that are getting in the way between you and that man, those are really important. But here's some suggestions on how to calm that anger. Take a few deep breaths. Step away and go for a walk. Remind yourself that conflict is an opportunity. Focus on humility, curiosity, and empathy, right? If you approach the conflict with humility and recognizing, you know what, I don't have it all figured out. You don't have it all figured out either. Let's figure it out together. If you're using curiosity and you're actually listening to understand, not just listening to respond, but truly help me understand what's going on here. And empathy, try to put yourself into their shoes. Try to understand what it might look like or feel like from their perspective. Those three things alone will help you to show up in the conversation in a much better way. By the way, this free module is just a slice of what we've got in the full Unwavering Husband course. In the full Unwavering Husband course, we've got 5 modules dedicated to communication. We've got 5 modules dedicated to being the man. Those 2 steps are the foundation, and so we spend a lot of time there. We've got a module just dedicated to being slow to anger and putting out the fire. So if you want more, I'd love for you to go ahead and pay for that course, 12-week course. We actually have 13 modules in there now. It's going to give you all the tools that you need to dive a lot more deeply into this. All right, last one here on how to calm that anger. Feed your spirit through daily prayer, scripture study, and worship. That's going to help you to get your heart into the right place. All right. So step 1 was be slow to anger. Step 2 is to approach the conflict. Matthew 5:9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God." The only way to make peace out of conflict is to approach it. Again, if you avoid it, it's not going to just go away with time. It's going to fester. It's going to grow. It's going to become a bigger problem. Avoiding conflict will not make it go away. All right, 2 really important things here on approaching, because again, how you approach it, it really matters a ton, right? If you approach it with anger, not going to go well. Now, your intentions and your tone and the words that you use have a huge impact on how that conversation is going to go as well. So are you approaching the conflict just so that you can make a point or get your way? Or are you approaching that conflict to resolve the issue and to repair the relationship? Those are 2 entirely different things. If you're going in to get your way, it's going to be an argument. And you're going to try to force your perspective onto her. And that's just not going to go well. But if you are going in with an intent of resolving the issue, with the intent of gaining understanding, with the intent of helping her to feel seen, heard, and understood, with the intent of repairing the relationship, it's going to go a lot better. And then check your approach. So we want to avoid blame. We want to avoid defensiveness because those things are not helpful at all. If you go into the conversation saying, you always, or you never, or what are you talking about? That thing I did, that's not a big deal. Why are you making such a big deal of it? It's not going to help, guys. Humility, empathy, curiosity. Sound familiar? Really, really important. Be humble. Try to put yourself into their shoes. Be curious. Again, I don't understand what's going on here. Can you help me to understand? It's going to help her to lower her guard, put her defenses down, and be able to open up. That's what builds the emotional safety. That's what builds the emotional connection. Women need that just as much as they need oxygen. They need to feel seen, heard, and understood before they're ready to talk about anything else. As men, we want to go straight to the fix. We don't want to talk about how we feel. We don't want to talk about the situation. We want to talk about how we're going to fix this and move on. You got to take that step first of helping her to feel understood, helping her to feel heard and seen. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. Be quick to hear and slow to speak. This is the third step in the process, guys. James 1:19 says, know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak. She needs to feel seen, heard, and understood before she'll be ready to hear and understand you, before she'll be ready to hear the wonderful solution that you have. As men, we tend to defend ourselves. We jump straight into that solution. It's too soon, right? It's kind of like if you drove up to the mechanic shop and they're like, yeah, you need a new engine. You're like, wait a second, you haven't even looked at the thing yet. Are you sure you understand what's going on? They need to feel understood, seen, and heard before they're ready for that, guys. In order to build that emotional safety, that emotional connection, we must help them to feel seen, heard, and understood. I can't express that enough, guys. Super, super important. So, how do we do that? Well, we ask some questions, right? This is where the curiosity comes in. I'm not quite understanding what you mean. Can you just help me understand that a little bit better? Sounds like when I leave my dirty clothes on the floor, you feel like I don't appreciate you. Is that right? Right? Because guys, it's not about the clothes on the floor. It's about her not feeling appreciated. It's about her not feeling respected. Like there's always something deeper. So asking the questions, right? When you ask her, it sounds like you don't feel appreciated. Is that what's really going on here? Then she's going to say, you understand. Finally, you're hearing what I'm saying. You want to acknowledge and validate her emotions to help her feel seen, heard, and understood. Okay, so not just listening to the words, paying attention to her heart. What's beneath the words, right? It's not just about the clothes on the floor, it's about not feeling appreciated. So saying things like, see, this is really important to you, right? Just acknowledging that. Oh, that makes sense. I can understand why you feel that way. That's validation. Well, note on validation, though, is that validation doesn't necessarily mean you agree or that you would feel the same way. It just means that you can understand why they feel the way that they do. Really, really important because I always thought in order to validate that I had to feel the same way. And in fact, I would do the opposite unintentionally, right? So when my wife would say, I feel fat, my answer would be, you're not fat, honey. You look wonderful, which sounds like the nice thing to say, right? And it's saying your emotions, your feelings are wrong. They're not valid. Now, this is a sticky one, right? Here's one of the best ways to approach that. She says, I feel fat. I don't think I look good in these clothes. You don't feel like you look good in those clothes? right? Just kind of repeat back to them with the question, which says, hey, I'm listening. Then they're going to open up more. Yeah, this is how I feel. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's probably pretty uncomfortable to feel that way, right? It's acknowledging those emotions, validating those emotions. That's how you help her to feel seen, heard, understood. Critical, guys. Really, really important. All right, last step, take ownership. Okay. As the man, it's your responsibility. It's not always your fault, but it is your responsibility as the man, as the leader, to resolve the conflict. Okay. Again, it's not always your fault that you guys are having conflict, but it's your responsibility to make sure it gets resolved. Matthew 7 3 through 5 says, why do you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. It's interesting. A lot of people don't see that last part. They pay attention to the log in your own eye, which is really good, right? Like, we need to focus on how are we contributing. We need to take ownership for how we've contributed to the situation. And it may be something that you did. It also might be something you didn't do. But we need to take ownership for the part that we played in the situation. That's taking the log out of our own eye. But what most people don't see or recognize in this passage is that it says, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So once we've worked on ourselves, once we've owned our part, then we'll be in a much better position to be able to help them with their part. We often defend ourselves and our actions, and we point the blame at them, right? We've got this log sticking out of our eye, and they're like, look at the speck in yours. You got to take ownership. This is part of that humility that we talked about earlier. It's not about blaming yourself. It's not about saying, I'm a terrible person, because I used to do that too. Well, I'm just a terrible husband. Maybe you ought to go find somebody better. Don't say that, guys. It doesn't work very well. It's about taking ownership. It's a difference between blame and ownership. It's about taking responsibility. In what ways have you contributed to the conflict through your action or your inaction? Sometimes you just let things slide. You're the leader. Okay. When Eve partook of the fruit, and then Adam took the fruit too, right? But Eve started that. She was the first one. Who did God come to? He came to Adam, because Adam was the head, because Adam was actually the one that he gave the commandment to. And what did Adam do? He threw the woman on the bus. And then God, right? He's like, well, it was that woman that you gave me. She's the one. And by the way, you're the one that gave her to me. Right? Totally defensive, totally not taking ownership. Man, it started all the way back there, guys. Okay. We need to take ownership. It can only be an argument if both of you guys are fighting, right? If both of you guys are arguing, it's not an argument. If she is angry and says, why can't you pick up your stinking clothes? And you say, you're right. I do leave my dirty clothes on the floor a lot. How does she argue with that? Right? But if you come back and you're like, what are you talking about, woman? That's your job anyways. By the way, tried that. Doesn't work very well. Not at all, guys. Not at all. Take ownership. It's hard for her to argue that. And then take ownership for the solution, right? So take ownership for how you contributed, then take ownership for how you're going to move forward. That's what leaders do. So things like, man, I'm going to put it all together here in a minute, but something like, I don't want you to think that I don't appreciate you. Here's what I'd like to try. I'm going to put a note on the bathroom door to remind me to put my dirty clothes away. Once I build that habit, I shouldn't need that note anymore. Right. So, yeah, you're right. I do leave my clothes on the floor a bunch. I don't want you to feel like you're not appreciated. I understand why you'd feel that way. That's not at all how I want you to feel. So here's what I'm going to do about it. Right. You got to take action. Words are not enough. Right. I'll try to do better. And she's going to go, yeah, right. I've heard that a million times. No, I'm not that I'm going to try to do better. Here's what I'm going to do. All right, let's put it all together, guys, and wrap this one up. Here's the scenario. Your wife stomps across the room, gives you that look that could kill, and goes to the bedroom and slams the door. Right? And you're just sitting on the couch and you're like, what just happened? I thought everything was okay. Just minding my own business on the couch. Now you could stomp in there. What is wrong with you? What's your problem? Want to be slow to anger. That's step one. Take a few deep breaths. Okay, calm down. Breathing actually is the quickest and easiest way to settle your nervous system down. Because when she looks at you like that and she slams that door, it's probably going to stir some stuff up for you. Take some deep breaths. Say a quick prayer. God, help me. I don't know what's going on, but I think I'm going to need some backup on this one. Now we want to approach the conflict. Step two. Remind yourself that this is an opportunity to build understanding and connection. All right, I'm going to be a peacemaker. Obviously, something's going on and there's not peace in the situation. I'm going to turn this conflict into peace. Sorry about that, guys. All right, calmly walk into the room. Okay, if you come just blazing through that door, she's gonna she's gonna put that guard up even more. Calmly walk in the room. Here's what you say. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but it seems like you're upset about something. Right? Calm and curious. I'm not sure what's going on. Her. I can't believe you. Right? She's angry. She's pissed, guys. Now you're like, whoa, okay, what's going on? Remember, stay calm, guys. Take a breath. Use humility, empathy, and curiosity to build understanding and emotional connection. What's going on? Right? You responding in a calm way is going to help her nervous system to settle down. What's going on? Right? Now, what's going on? What's your problem? It's not that. What's going on? How many times do I need to ask you to put your dirty clothes in the hamper? Okay. Oh gosh, I left my clothes on the floor again. Yes, we just talked about that last night. Yeah, you're right. We did talk about that last night. And I can understand why you'd be frustrated. You'd be frustrated too. Not just frustrated, it feels like you don't appreciate me and all that I do around here. Feels like you're just another kid to pick up after. It's the last thing I need. Sounds like this goes a lot deeper than just clothes on the floor. Not only is this more work for you, but it sounds like it leaves you feeling unappreciated. Is that right? Okay, this is that acknowledging, that understanding, the validating. Yes. And that's what you want to get to. You want to hear her say, yes, that's what's going on. That's exactly it. That's her saying, he finally gets it. Now we're going to take ownership. Okay. Again, ownership for how you contributed, ownership for the solution. I never realized that it went this deep for you. Figured it was just an annoyance. It didn't seem like that big of a deal to me, but the last thing that I want is for you to feel disrespected. Like, I have an idea though. You mind if I share that? Okay, we're using curiosity. We're actually bringing her into the conversation. What is it? Right? Again, right here, if you were like, um, okay, I'll try to do better. Come on, quit making such a big deal. Not going to go well. Okay, take ownership, validate her, help her to feel seen, heard, understood. For a little while, I'm going to put a sticky note on the back of the bathroom door. So when I walk out, I'll have a reminder to put my clothes up. I'll do my best, but sometimes I might forget. So if you notice, appreciate if you could just remind me by simply saying, did you forget something? What do you think about that? Right. So this is giving her permission to remind you, right? Which helps her to know that it's okay to say, hey, did you forget something? Which is a lot better than I can't believe you. It also helps you to know that, hey, I just gave her permission to call me out on this. And so when she calls me out, I can't be defensive about that. Like, she's doing the thing I asked her to do. And her, that sounds like a good idea, but I just don't believe you're going to follow through. I mean, you always say that you're going to do it and you don't. And she probably has a valid point right here, guys. Again, we're going to take ownership. You're right. I haven't followed through with it in the past, and I don't blame you for having a hard time trusting me. That's validating her. Hey, yeah, it makes sense why you don't trust me, because you've said this a million times and I'm still leaving my clothes on the floor. Yeah, this is something I'm working on and I'm going to show you with my actions. That's what she needs. She needs the actions to back up the words. And if you've had a long history of you saying that you're going to do things and you don't follow through on, that breaks the trust. She's not going to believe you. She's going to feel like she has to keep nagging and nagging and nagging. If you want the nagging to stop, you need to do something different, guys. All right. Those are the pieces. So, what are the next steps? I want you to think through a recent argument. I want you to write down how you would have handled each of those steps that I outlined above. If you could go back to that argument, okay, how could you have been slow to anger? How could you have approached the conflict? How could you have been quick to hear and slow to speak? How could you have taken ownership? Print this module out and keep it somewhere where you can look at it on a regular basis and memorize these steps, guys. Especially before approaching conflict, when you're like, man, I've got this thing that I need to talk to my wife about. Let me take a look at this real quick to remind myself. And then practice, practice, practice. You're retraining. Okay. The way that we handle conflict is almost like a dance that we develop over time, where she says this and then you say that and then she does this and you do that, and it's like, I step left, she steps right. You kind of go through these motions. It's something that you've learned and developed over time, and now you're creating something new. You're building something new. It's going to take practice. You have to kind of force yourself to do the new thing for a little while before it becomes the default. That's it, guys. Man, I hope this helps a ton. Communication is critical to a healthy relationship. It's how we resolve conflict. It's how we build that emotional connection, that emotional safety. It's how we feel like we're on the same team, working together against the problems instead of the problems getting in between us and driving us apart. And again, if you want more, like I said, we've got 5 modules dedicated just to communication in the full Unwavering Husband course. All right, guys, practice, practice, practice. See you soon.